Good evening. This is our special meeting of July 13th at 6 o'clock for a variance hearing, PF 21-0004. I hear it coming from him. Yeah. Roseanne, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Hoppe?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hamilton?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez? Here. Commissioner Kennedy?
Here.
Samara?
Here.
Okay, Commissioner Samaria, would you lead us please in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the variance presentation.
You ready for me, Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry, Ed, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. The hearing will be conducted by the Village Commission, which will hear testimony from the applicant and then the public. The clerk will swear in all witnesses before they speak. Each person who speaks should state their name and whether they have been sworn in. The material in the Commission's agenda package will be considered as part of the record. After the applicant has testified, the hearing will be opened up to members of the public to speak in support of or against the application for the variance. Members of the public may choose to be sworn in. If a member of the public chooses not to be sworn in, the Village Commission may consider that as a factor in evaluating the speaker's comments. After members of the public speak, the applicant may make any additional closing statements. We now move to quasi-judicial disclosure. If any commissioner has had any ex parte contacts that are not already part of the record, those contacts must be verbally disclosed at this time. And that means all contacts that you've had with respect to this matter. So are there any disclosures?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Hamilberg, go ahead.
You disclose who and what the substance of the conversation was.
Unmute yourself, please.
Huh?
Unmute yourself, please.
I discussed where the property was with the village clerk. I discussed a little bit about it with our village manager. I discussed the case with Linda Dillon. I discussed a little bit. I discussed more in detail with Gage Hartung, who is in P&Z. And I knew somebody who used to live on that street. And I wanted to get a little history of the background of that piece of property. And her name is Kim Hoyo. She no longer lives in town.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
Yes.
Yeah, I had to, sorry.
Commissioner Samaria,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just discussed it with the city. Discussed it.
Yes, I met with the attorney for the people who were asking for the variance. One was at Rachel a couple months ago, a month ago. We met here at the log cabin and we discussed it. I discussed it very briefly with Mario once during one of our weekly meetings. I was involved in some conversation on next door about it with some residents about the fact that this was taking place tonight. And I discussed it with Gage very briefly one time, and my husband, Dan Schneider, at length. He's an architect and I wanted his take on this, or he's an urban planner.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yeah, I also spoke with Gage Hartung. I spoke with Mario, and I also spoke with the attorney Rachel that's representing.
Okay, and I turned down a meeting with the attorney. I didn't discuss this.
Okay.
Okay,
Before we move on, are there any other disclosures that anyone would like to make? Just trying to make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. I emailed a couple of residents who attended the last variance hearing for this property to let them know that it was coming back. So I emailed Barbara and Gary Kuehl to let them know, just to make sure that they were aware already. And I emailed Nancy Davis because she had spoken out at the last meeting. I wanted to make sure she was aware. Didn't talk to them, but I sent them emails and I texted with Nancy a couple of times.
Please be advised that your decision at the conclusion of the hearing must be based upon competent, substantial evidence related to the village's code of ordinances and not generalized opposition that is not fact-based. At this time, all persons who will be witnesses in this matter, please raise your hand so that the clerk may swear you in.
Is there anybody on the Zoom that wants to speak and be sworn in as well? I don't see any.
No.
Yeah. So, do you swear to tell the truth, only the truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, at this point in time, we'll hear from the applicant.
Okay. Do I need the microphone? Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Kind of, we can hear you, but if you don't.
How are we doing? How are we doing now? Can you hear me on the Zoom? Okay. I'm sorry? Hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the commission, residents of the Village of Biscayne Park, Mr. Manager. My name is Rachel Streitfeld. My law firm is Brightside Legal, and I'm here representing the applicants this evening, the owners of the property here in Biscayne Park. Technically, it doesn't really have an address yet, but we're calling it 661 Northeast 120th Street. For the record, my office is in North Bay Village at 1455 North Treasure Drive. We're here before you asking for the minimum variance required to allow for the construction of a single-story, single-family home. The proposal before you this evening meets every single one of the requirements of the Village of Biscayne Park zoning code, every single one. The only problem that we have, and that's why we're asking for a variance this evening, is that this vacant lot is 7,125 square feet, whereas the minimum lot size in Sector B is 8,500 square feet. I don't know exactly when the Village of Biscayne Park changed its code to require the minimum lot size of 8,500 square feet. However, that did happen. And so we are here asking for the variance to simply allow construction of this single-story, single-family home, which is otherwise completely and entirely consistent with your zoning code. We have a unanimous approval that we received from your Planning and Zoning Board. I was here, I gave a presentation to the Planning and Zoning Board. We answered their questions. And again, we received a unanimous approval for this variance. Now, you may recall, I'm sure you absolutely recall, for those of you who were on the dais at the time, that this applicant came before you in November of 2020, in November of 2020, asking for 2 variances. At the time, there was no land use attorney representing the applicant. And again, that request was for 2 variances. You all denied that request. The property owners have owned this lot for about 3 years and are sincere and committed to building a single family home for their family on that lot. And consistent with that sincerity, they approached me, they retained my services so that I could more effectively, appropriately, respectfully represent their interests before you this evening. And as a result of my being retained and my extensive conversations with the architect, with the general contractor, with the owner, I did go back and I watched the entire variance procedure from that meeting in November 2020. We have submitted before you a completely different application that, again, it only asks for one variance, the minimum lot size variance. We don't have any issues with setbacks, with height, with anything else. It is simply because the lot that we want to build this house on is 7,125 square feet as opposed to 8,500 square feet. The owners have asked me tonight, and they're here on Zoom, the owners have asked me to convey to you their essentially sincere and almost desperate desire to be able to utilize this property consistent with the future land use map and the zoning map of this village. And that would be in the form of a single family home intended for a family to reside in. Based on our conversations this evening, and we can talk about it if the dais so chooses, we want to be able to use this property to build a home. And if the commission feels that conditions on an approval would be appropriate, my client has essentially authorized me to agree to conditions that you all may impose on such development. Because without this variance, my clients are stuck with a property that they cannot use at all, and that frankly, they will not be able to sell. I'm going to move forward with my presentation this evening, and you can feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Before you, you have a packet with all of the slides. This first slide is the site plan so that you can see the summary of what we are building. And I will just walk you through it very quickly. The Sector B development is consistent with your setback requirements. We have a front setback of 30 feet, a rear setback of 10 feet, a side setback of 10 feet. The carport is 20 feet by 20 feet for a total of 400 square feet. And we meet the maximum lot coverage. We actually come in under your 50% maximum lot coverage. We're coming in at around 47%. As I mentioned, it is a single story home that we are proposing with a 16-foot height, which is within your height requirements. We understand that massing and character is very important in the village of Biscayne Park, which is a historic community here in Miami-Dade County, and we understand that that character needs to be preserved. So we are not coming here asking for a 2-story building. This is a single-story building. Moving on to the next slide. We have the layout of the home. You can see that there is going to be an open floor plan so that children and family members can participate in cooking, dining, and in living. There are 3 bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, a pool deck, and a pool. The next slide shows the elevations of the building, and our architect is here if anyone has any questions. This is, I think, a beautifully designed building that, while it is modern in its style, it also harkens back to that sort of mid-century construction, and I think will be very consistent with what exists here in the village of Biscayne Park. Following this slide, you have several other renderings of what the home will look like. And then there is a materials page that identifies the finishings on the property. There will be a smooth stucco wall finish, exterior wood wall cladding, a mission style stucco wall finish, and the carport will be made of aluminum. Before I move to the 4 requirements for a variance pursuant to the Village of Biscayne Parks Code, are there any questions from the dais specifically about the size, the architecture, the style, or the setbacks or the lot coverage? Are there any questions from the dais about sort of the built aspects of this application?
I think it's better if you finish your presentation, then the commissioners will.
Yes, Madam Mayor,
address.
absolutely, I will do
Okay.
that. So I just want to walk us through the 4 very specific requirements for a variance that are outlined in the Village of Biscayne Parks Code. And as you all know, and you heard your village attorney state very clearly, that these are the 4 criteria that will amount to competent substantial evidence for your decision this evening. So beginning with number 1, it is our obligation, our burden rather, to show that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting this property, which are such that strict application of the code would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of their land. 1, the strict applications of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of their land. The property is a platted lot in the Village of Biscayne Park. Under the zoning code, it is zoned for single family development. The applicant will use this property for a single family development. The future land use map of the Village of Biscayne Park identifies this as a residential lot. The applicant will use this property as a residential lot. Again, it is a platted lot. It is not a lot reserved for open space, for recreation, for institutional, educational, any other uses. The future land use map and the zoning code designate this as a single family residential lot, and that is consistent with how the applicant intends to use it. Without this variance, the property cannot be developed as the zoning code and future land use map intend. Number 2, the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant. As I mentioned previously, the owners have owned this parcel for 3 years. The only use that they can make of it is a single family home. And we are asking tonight for this variance so the owners can use this property to develop a single family home. The owners purchased the property with the intent to build a single family home consistent with the character of Biscayne Park, its land development code, and the comprehensive plan. Understanding the variance ordinance and the requirements for the same, the owners do have the right to develop the property so long as these 4 conditions are met. Without the variance, the owners are deprived of their right to do anything with the land. 3, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property in the area in which the property is located. This application supports the construction of a single family residence that meets every single requirement of the Village of Biscayne Park Code, every single one. The use of the property as a single family residence is consistent with the code and the future land use map. And by maintaining the required setbacks, by maintaining the lot coverage maximum, by maintaining the use requirements and proactively limiting the construction to a single story as opposed to a 2-story residence, which is allowed, the project demonstrates respect for the character of your neighborhood and is not detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property in the area, as the area is, as you know, exclusively single family residential. I will mention that across the street on the mirror image property, there is a lot exactly the same size, 7,125 square feet. And that lot has been developed with a single family home. And to my knowledge, there has not been anything injurious or detrimental to the public welfare because of that property being developed. Now, obviously that property was developed before you all changed the minimum lot size. However, the point is just that there is nothing that is going to be, nothing terrible will befall the neighbors with the addition of one more home on what is otherwise a beautiful, quiet street. The development of a new house in the village of Biscayne Park will, however, add to ad valorem taxes that go to the village's budget. So we think that it actually will be contributing to this community. 4, the variance proposed is the minimum variance that makes possible the reasonable use of the property. Now, when we were here in November of 2020, we were asking for 2 variances. The applicant, the owner, we have learned from our so-called mistakes, as I'll say, and come to you with just the one request. We are just asking for this lot size minimum variance. So pursuant to the Village of Biscayne Park Future Land Use Map and Land Development Code, the reasonable use of this property is as a single family detached residence. The project prescribes the construction of a single family detached residence that has, again, the project has been redesigned since the owner's last submittal in the fall of 2020. We are only requesting 1 variance. Another difference is we have moved the septic tank from the backyard to the front yard to address concerns about setbacks. So the front yard will be a big grassy open space. The septic tank and drainage field will be in the front yard. And this allows us to both develop the single family home so that it's livable and enjoyable and that a family can enjoy a swimming pool here in Florida. But we are also listening to what you asked for in that November 2020 meeting and delivering on what those requests were at the time. A 1-story residence is proposed again to minimize the impact of the project on surrounding properties. And the last slide just goes through a brief comparison between what was proposed in the prior application from November 2020 and what we are proposing today. We have a little bit less air-conditioned area. The carport is the same. We have more entry steps because the siting of the actual property has been changed. And we have moved the front of the house farther back to be consistent with your setback requirements. The pool area is 566 square feet, and the total square footage is 3,371 square feet. Again, all of these details are consistent with and comply with your zoning code for Sector B. And I will just say that it has been a pleasure working with the Village of Biscayne Park. The manager, the clerk especially, have been very responsive. I want to thank the commissioners who did take the time to meet with me. And for those of you who did not, I understand completely and I appreciate your attention this evening. And I'm here to answer your questions, whatever they are.
Thank you very much. Is your presentation is finished?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Can the commissioners give your opinion or questions? Vice Mayor Himmelberg, you first.
Just questions.
Oh,
questions of Ms. Stripe.
No questions.
No question.
Okay. Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yeah. I just have one question.
The first time that this was brought and it was denied, they were requesting 2 variances. I don't know. I was part of the commission at the time, and I don't know what the P&Z board did as far as a recommendation. What did you? Was it unanimous? Do you remember what the vote was for that?
I was going to call him after we finish.
Well, I'm sure.
The planning in November 2020, the applicant was coming with a recommendation of approval from the Planning and Zoning Board.
It was also unanimous.
I don't recall. I do know that we did give our.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Kennedy, any questions?
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation, Rachel. Just want to clarify, the setbacks on the first page, this is so annoying. The setbacks that are listed there are all the minimum setbacks that we have in the village, correct? Nothing is a larger setback than what we currently require.
No, our setbacks are 30, 10, and 10, consistent with the code.
Okay, so no, you're not providing for any greater setback than what's set in the code.
No.
Got it. And what year did your clients buy this property?
My clients purchased the property, I believe, in 2018.
Okay. And you don't know what year we set the minimum lot size for the village when you and I met?
Right, and you did ask that question. So I went back. This is interesting to me. Obviously, as a zoning attorney, I look at a lot of zoning codes. The table A that holds the minimum lot sizes for your various residential and other sectors is kind of buried in your code, and it's not in an obvious place.
At the end,
note the laughter by the village attorneys. So the minimum, the table A for the lot sizes, in Muni Code, it will show you when the last changes were made to an ordinance, and Muni Code does not tell us when the table A was last amended.
Right.
So I did submit a Public Records Act request to the clerk. I believe the clerk and the village manager were looking through physical hard files to find the ordinance from 1993 that created the zoning code. But to this moment right now, I cannot confirm for you whether the minimum lot size for Sector B was established in 1993 or at some other time. But we're just going to guess that it was established in 1993.
So at the most recent, it was established in 93, but it may have been carried over from previous years. We can't tell, because I looked in there as well. You and I had a conversation and we couldn't figure it out.
Unless the clerk has additional information at this time.
No.
We don't know.
Okay, so a minimum of 1993. Okay, so your clients bought the property 3 years ago, let's say, and this minimum square footage was there at least in 93. Did your clients not have any idea that this was one of our requirements when they bought this land?
No, they did not.
How did they find that out and when?
The clients found out that they would need a variance to develop the property when they submitted plans, I believe. Yeah, when they submitted their architectural drawings for building permits. For a single family property to be developed as a single family, a zoning due diligence is very, 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 very atypical. So whoever their realtor was presented this property and said, yep, this is a residential lot in a residential community. To hire a zoning attorney to review the minimum lot size requirements pursuant to a zoning code is never done. In a more complicated transaction with a more intense development, potentially something that's mixed use or where you're going to have high rises and you're trying to do a lot aggregation, then in a commercial transaction, yes, it is absolutely common to bring on a zoning attorney to do that due diligence. But in this situation where it's a single family lot in a single family neighborhood, they did not know. They assumed that it was buildable.
And did they purchase it from the person who owned it for many, many years, who also owned the property next to it? So they bought it from that same person because she's...
So Commissioner Kennedy, if I may, with me this evening, and I should have introduced them at the beginning, I apologize, gentlemen, General Contractor Matias Jaramillo and our architect, Juan Zapata is here as well. So Matias, if you want to answer that question, please come use the microphone.
Hi, how are you?
State your name.
My name is Matias. I'm here for the commissioner meeting for
So you've been sworn in.
Huh?
You've been sworn in.
I've been sworn in. Oh yeah. Sorry. I've been sworn in. Okay. And when our client bought this lot, I remember that we went to the city asking the city if it was buildable. And Jean Paul was at that moment in the city. And he gave us some documents telling us that it was buildable because of the dimensions of the lot, not the area, just the dimensions, none and the depth. And that was one of the reasons. And he gave us some documents showing us that it was okay. And I think with that, our client was okay to buy the property. And that was an application that the previous owner did to the city. And I think that's why one of the reasons.
So it's Mateus.
Yes.
Mateus. Were you contracted by the owners before they bought the property?
No, I was helping them just to figure out if it was okay.
So before they bought the property, you already had a relationship with the owners?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so at that point you came to the city before they bought the property and you inquired with our building clerk?
Yes, I asked Jean Paul at the moment. I asked, hey, this person wants to buy this property. It's buildable, it's okay. And he said, yes, it's okay.
So that was before they bought the property. You were informed by the village in an informal way. Do you have any of the documents that he provided to you? Do you have them with you?
Yes, I think.
Or have they been provided to us?
1 second. Let me see if I can find those here.
So just while you're looking for that, just so I understand, Rachel, I want to make sure I understood what he said. Before your clients bought the property, they already had a relationship with Mateus, who would be the contractor if they were to build something. He's the contractor or the architect?
General contractor.
General contractor. And before they closed, he came to the village and asked if it were a buildable lot, and he was given something that indicated that it was. That's what I'm understanding? Okay, great. I'd like to see that document if he could find it.
Again, Mayor, if I can say now, Commissioner Gonzalez, I found on the application in November, the planning zoning board approved for variance by 3 members. If no denied, all 3 approved.
Was it a quorum of only 3, or was it 3-2?
Yes, it was a quorum.
It was 3-0.
Yes.
While he's looking for that, Rachel, in the interest of saving some time, could I ask you a question? In your 4 points, which you laid out very nicely for us, thank you for that. It's nice to have it nice and organized. You indicated number 1, the future land use map of the village of Biscayne Park also supports the property's use as a single-family residential development. Are you referring to this property specifically, or that zone in the village, or the village in general?
This property specifically is zoned for single family residential, and the future land use map also indicates its intent to be developed as a single family residence.
Specifically, that property is indicated, not just the village in general.
Yes, the future land use map shows parcel by parcel what is intended, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll ask one more of you since we're waiting for him. In number 3, point number 3, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property in the area. Define public welfare. What does it mean in that section? Does it mean safety issues only, or does that also include sort of the character and feel of the village? What does that mean, public welfare? It won't be injurious to the public welfare of Biscayne Park.
I'm happy to opine, Commissioner, about what I think public welfare means in that context. I think that it means quality of life for the residents, making sure that their streets are safe, making sure that they are allowed to enjoy their property without nuisances. And I think it is preserving public health and quality of life is what I think that goes to. And again, I think that our application is consistent with that. This is, you know, a single family home in a single family neighborhood. you know, the lot is big enough to fit a single family home.
Okay.
It's just the technical requirement of
Okay,
your
I wanted to
code.
hear your opinion of that. Can I ask the same question of our attorneys, or are you guys going to look at me and say that's our job to figure out what we think that means?
That's what we're going to tell you.
Okay.
Finish, Commissioner Kennedy? Okay, well, we'll continue while we're waiting for the answer for your question. Commissioner Samaria, do you want to, questions?
No, I have just no question. I have comments, but I'll say that when we have it. But your presentation was really good. I liked your 4 points. I've always had trouble understanding the 4 points, and I think you expressed it very good. So I have no questions for that. But it is the only question I have. They are going to live in a single family home, right?
Yes, sir.
And I know you can't predict the future. Their intention is not to build in a single family home, live in it for a little while, and then sell it.
I
mean, there's no guarantee on that, but
did you get it?
My understanding from the client, and I, you know, I did speak to him a little bit about his ties to the neighborhood. My client bought this property with his son. They have a large family. He has young grandkids. They intend to use this as a family home.
I mean, that's not going to make a difference even if they were to sell it later on. I was just curious because the way it sounds as if, you know, they're sincere that they would, from what you're expressing, that they're sincere, they would have to have this as a family home.
Yes, Commissioner.
So, okay, I have no problem. Thank you.
Jenny, may I ask, since while he's looking for that, can we ask Gage did they ever produce a document to P&Z that indicated what they're saying? And what, can we ask Gage that, or are we going to talk to him separately? Okay, then I'll ask Gage the same question when we have that. Thank you.
Okay, did you find that, or shall we continue? No, yes, continue on.
Yeah, if there are no more questions of the applicant, if you have someone else that you would like to present, or is that your presentation?
That concludes my presentation. If there are questions from the dais or during public comment that would require the response of our architect or the general contractor, I'm happy for them to answer any questions as well. But that does conclude my presentation, although I will reserve some time at the end to respond to any public comments.
Absolutely.
And okay, yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone present in the log cabin who would like to speak in support of the application? Okay. Is there anyone present who would like to speak against the application? How about on Zoom?
I think that we'll hear from planning and zoning, but not as a pro or a con, just their findings. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Gage?
I'm sure the applicant doesn't mind. Please.
Hi, good evening. Gage Hartung, Planning and Zoning, and I have been sworn in.
Thanks.
Just to speak to the planning board did review the application, and was the presentation that we just saw was we had the same presentation. We looked at the 4 points, special circumstances, property rights, and not be detrimental. Sorry, I'm looking at my phone, and that this is a minimum variance. And we felt all 4 points were met by the application. And actually, I commend you on the application. It's probably the best I've seen as far as completing and the 4 points. You know, we don't usually get this type of detail, but you know, it's a single family house. They are meeting all the same setbacks that any other lot would have on the same block. They are, they're meeting the same 50% lot coverage and such. So just speaking on behalf of the board, we did vote 5-0 to recommend to the commission to move forward with the variance. And that would be my presentation as far as the planning board goes. If you would like me to speak to that letter that he's looking for, I do remember the applicants coming in for their first meeting. They presented, and I think they actually, they came in and our first thing was, this lot's not buildable. And then they presented a letter And I remember reading the letter in the open meeting and reading it and going, this is not correct. And then as I flipped the page, I saw that it actually was signed by the village, the building clerk at the time. And at that point, we informed them that the letter was incorrect, that yes, it did have all the proper dimensions, but the lot did not have the proper square footage. So at that point, we informed the property owner that the letter was incorrect and that they would have to go through the variance process to develop this lot. So
may I ask a question of Gage regarding that?
Does that answer your question?
It answers much of my question, but let me follow up if I may. So Gage, what I'm hearing you say is the applicant or some of their representatives or both came to planning and zoning asking for approval to build a house, and they produced a letter from the village signed by a village employee, someone from the building department, that indicated that it was a buildable lot. The letter that Mateus is looking for, you saw it, and it was on village letterhead, and you saw a signed piece of paper indicating that.
Yes.
Now, what I need to know is, so Mateus, do you have it there in front of you now? I'd like to see that if I don't know how you present something like that when someone's holding it on the phone. But what I'd like to know is, and I don't know if Gage can answer this, but what I would like to know from somebody is, did that meeting happen before or after these people closed on the property?
I don't recall. I don't know that answer to answer that question. But they had already, if I remember correctly, they had already had some concepts they came in with, like this is.
Would you review a plan from someone who did not own property in the village? Would you even know?
Typically we don't, but we do have people that come in under discussion. They say, hey, I'm looking to buy this property. What do you think of this? And we do give feedback at that.
I would love to know the date of that meeting and the closing date for the property.
Okay. We would have to go back and.
Roseanne's finding the date of the meeting. Of what year? Does that sound right to you, Gage?
I think it was previous to that. August of 2020, I think was when you came in for the original variance application. This would have been back when they purchased it in 2018. I think it was 2018.
Is that the first time? She's showing us here. Is that the first time they came before P&Z, or maybe they've been there before?
Excuse me a second. The court reporter have a question?
I'm not hearing the clerk. I'm sorry. I can't hear you now.
I'm sorry. The minutes for the planning and zoning board. The minutes for the planning and zoning board that I have here that was presented with the application on November 2020. It states the meeting was held on August 17, 2020.
Okay. Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
I have found in my email a zoning verification letter from July 9th, 2018. And this is addressed to Michelle Peters Liptak, who I believe was the previous owner of this property. And this zoning verification letter is signed by John Paul Ellie, the building coordinator. And it does advise that a single detached one family can be erected on the lot if minimum requirements are met.
Okay, so you're telling us the date on that is July 9th, 2018, that the prior owner of the property got a letter saying that a house could be built on that, providing that minimal standards would be met.
Yes, and that letter was transmitted to my client.
What was the closing date of your clients? What date did they buy the property?
I don't have the answer to that, Commissioner Kennedy. I'm sorry.
I bet we could find it on Zillow. Oh, maybe we couldn't. Maybe we couldn't. It's the, that's it. That's it. You're on the right one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
After that. Commissioner Gonzalez found it online. January 2019, they closed on the property. So I'm understanding the sort of the timeline here. July of 2018, there was a letter from the village to the prior owner saying that a house could be built on that property. Can you read the language again of the letter? Just read that sentence.
Therefore, a single detached, one family can be erected on lot 48, block 14 if minimum requirements are met.
That was to the previous owner.
Michelle Peters Liptak is
so
the
she provided
recipient
that to
of this letter.
To the people who bought the property. They closed 6 months later. They purchased the property, and then about a year after that, a year and a half after that, they went to P&Z and were rejected because of the lot size. Okay, I see how. That's the, he had the same, it's the same letter. It's the same letter. Okay, so the timeline, bottom line, the timeline supports that your clients had an understanding that that was a buildable lot before they bought the lot from the previous owner, and that the village provided information that indicated such.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more?
Just one question.
Commissioner Mary has a question.
Yeah, just one question I have. Did you have, going through this whole process, do you have any concerns? Did the board have any concerns of anything that they did not, were not going to meet any of the requirements?
No, I don't believe we did. I mean, we voted.
No, I know you voted for it.
But I think all questions were asked or were answered. We went down the roll like you do, and each person, each member was able to ask questions, and the attorney was able to reply, and we voted. So I think all our questions were answered.
All the board members' questions were answered. Okay.
Hi, are there any other questions of anybody, or can we go to the public questions? So any?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Commissioner, Vice Mayor Mulberg, go ahead.
No, not yet, excuse me.
Oh,
not yet.
Please wait till we get all the comments in and we get to discussion.
Are you going to call Ed, or should I? For public comments, please raise your hand and make sure you give your name and whether you're sworn in. Do you see them,
yes.
Roseanne?
Joanna Dina.
I am Joanna Dina.
Hi, I have not been sworn in. I don't even know how to do that on Zoom.
Okay, well, raise your right hand. And can you open your face up on this?
Yes, let's see here. It's not allowing me for some reason. Let's see.
I hate to interrupt, but it is critical that the court reporter hear the question. It is critical that I hear the question. So can we pause?
I'll repeat the question.
Okay, thank you.
I'll repeat the question.
I'll let it come out of my... No, but she can hear it.
No, she can't. I'll repeat the question. It's not a problem. Joanne?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't get it to work, but I can be very clear. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, so I live in this street on the exact lot on the east side of the street. And my lot is a little bigger. It's 11,000 square feet. But we are also set back, and it appears that they're going to do very, very similar zoning to their house, and the setup is quite similar. And honestly, we have met these people, and all of the neighbors around know these people that have bought this lot. And I don't think none of us here on the street have any issues with building this house.
Okay, so let me just repeat you. She's making a statement, Joanne, D-I-N-A-N. She's making a statement that she lives on the opposite end of the same street, has similar problems with her setback, and they have no problems, and that none of the neighbors have any problems. Is that correct, Joanne? I'm repeating it for the court reporter.
Yes, correct. I mean, we have we're probably going to have the exact same square footage in our house. If this had been an issue with my house, then I wouldn't have the house that I have. And, you know, it seems inappropriate, and it would be the exact same on the west side of the cul-de-sac. So I really,
okay. Just a second. Yes.
Can I have the name and spelling of the person that's talking?
It's Joanna, Joanna, Dinnan. And what's your address, Joanna?
Thank you.
120th.
What's your address? I'm sorry.
It's 741 120th Street. So like the other
741 120th Street, Biscayne Park. Okay. Anything else, Joanna?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. There's a Josh.
Yeah.
Josh, let me just say the name, Roseanne. Josh, N-A-K. Where is he? I lost him.
He's in the middle.
N-A-K-A-Y-A. Okay, Josh, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Mayor and committee and commissioners. My name is Josh Nakaya. I and my wife are the new owners of the adjoining property, 660 Northeast 120th Street. I have not been sworn in, but I'm happy to be so if you would like.
Okay, Roseanne, you want to swear Josh in? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Josh? I do.
Thank you. Okay, let me just repeat for the court reporter. His address is 660 120th Street, Biscayne Park. Okay, continue, Josh.
Yes, my wife and I are the owners of the adjoining property, and we are in support of this variance being approved and the building moving forward. We have no problem with this lot being built on, and I have some familiarity with the owners and would be happy to welcome them into the neighborhood.
Thank you. He's the next door neighbor, and he has no problems with anything that's going on. He's met the people, and he's got no problem with the variance. Okay. Do we have any others that want to speak on this?
I don't see anybody else.
Okay. Anybody else?
We have Linda present here.
It's Linda Dillon.
What? Oh, Linda Dillon.
She never talks.
I'm a 43-year resident of the village, and I'm thrilled to see the new buildings that are going up. The property values have increased dramatically, and I saw this piece of property recently. Commissioner Hamburg just the other night went to take a look at it. I had forgotten about this piece of property because it is so overgrown you can hardly see it. But I think it would behoove the village to accept this and grant this variance for many, many reasons.
Thank you, Linda Dillon. Are there any other residents that would like to speak on this? If you do, please put that hand up or, okay. Okay, Ed?
We'll close public. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Ms. Draper?
No, thank you all for your consideration. And unless you all have any other questions, we'll start.
Okay, public comments are closed.
It's appropriate to take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Dan Samaria made a motion to
move to approve.
I make a motion to approve the variance hearing PV 21-0004.
And seconded by Vice Mayor Himmelberg. Is there any other comments that anyone on the commission would like to make?
I would.
Vice Mayor Himmelberg.
unmute myself. Okay, my only concern was moving here from Coconut Grove to Biscayne Park in 1996. The density in the Grove we saw, just they subdivided and subdivided and subdivided lots. And I don't hardly visit my friends in the Grove anymore because you can't get into the Grove or through the Grove or around the Grove. So subdivision of properties was my primary concern. When I spoke with Kim Hoyo, I also spoke with Gage Hartung. What I came to realize was this was a plotted piece of land that was not a part of Michelle Peters' property initially. She picked it up in 2008 when it was foreclosed upon, and she bought it as a foreclosure, and it had not been a part of the property she'd owned for years. So it's not a subdivision of an existing property. It is exactly where the property line was. It was not a part of her 1927 house that we could ever trace or that she ever knew of. And so with that, I'm happy to see a piece of land get used that was meant for that, even though it is a little bit smaller than what we intend. I think because it's not chopping us up into little pieces for more density, my objections are gone.
Are there any other comments for the commission?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. You want to go? Go ahead.
Commissioner Samaria.
That's fine.
I've always believed that when people buy properties, they should be able to build what they want to build on it, as long as they follow our code and get all the permits that they needed. Since I don't know a lot about this stuff, I have to rely on our P&Z, who are made up of members. And since the P&Z supported this completely and had no concerns about it, I don't have a problem with it. Again, I want to thank you for your presentation, because your presentation was very good. It explained each of the 4 points on it. And this, even though if we do give a variance to be for your property, doesn't mean that somebody else is going to get the same variance. Okay, so I go property by property, and I have no problems with this variance at all. I'm in full support.
Thank you, Commissioner Samaria. Commissioner Gonzalez.
So I just want to echo what Commissioner Hammelberg was saying about dividing up plots of land as opposed to plots that have been here since the beginning. I think that unless the village decides that we want to get into the business of buying properties and turning them into parks, you know, these lots exist, and as long as they comply with setbacks and complying with all the rules and regulations outside of the fact that, you know, it might be a little bit smaller, then I think that, you know, we have to move forward with this. So I'm fine with the application as it is.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Can we move?
I'd like to say a couple of things.
Commissioner Kennedy.
First of all, Rachel, thank you for the great presentation. And I appreciate you gentlemen coming as well and finding that document for us to see. So when we have these hearings, we have to base it on the evidence that we see here this evening, and that's very clear. And not any generalized opposition to use the words that Ed shared with us earlier. And I have some serious, you know, reservations about density concerns in the village and all of that. But that's my personal opinion and my generalized opposition to it, which I can't consider tonight. I have to consider what you showed to us, Rachel. We also can't consider who's going to live in it, how long they'll live in it, whether it'll be turned into something else, sold next week. None of that's our business. They can do with it whatever they want. So while I have that concern that it will just be flipped or turned into an Airbnb, that's my personal issue, and that can't be considered here tonight either. We have to stick to the 4 points. And I'm also not considering the previous request, because that was then and this is now. So we have to look at the request that was done tonight. And your comment about otherwise your client will be stuck with a property that they can't sell. In the words of Judge Judy, who I'm a huge fan of, that's not my problem. So, I'm really not concerned that they might be stuck with something, because if they're stuck with it, that's on them. However, your 4 points, you meet the 4 points. And outside of the document that we were shown this evening, I can see that you're meeting the 4 points. And I respect what the P&Z board comes to us. They advise us. They don't tell us what to do. They advise, we decide. But I do value their opinion. And in this regard, I think they got it right. And I'm especially concerned, and was happy for you that we were able to produce that letter tonight that indicated that your clients did not know this was a buildable lot. And not only did they not know, but they had very strong reason to believe that it was a buildable lot, and they were provided that information by this village. So I think if something went sideways here, it's on the village, not on your client, judging by the letter that we saw. And Gage remembering seeing that letter as well. So it sounds like if something went wrong here with this whole thing, it's our problem, not yours. So this one's our problem, not yours or your clients. So even if I were not predisposed to agree with this evening, that would force me to, because I really do believe that your clients had reason to believe they could build on that lot based on a letter that was provided to them by the previous owner of the property. So, however, if Ed tells me or Valerie tells me that this is the point at which I could discuss some additional considerations before we would vote on this, is this the point we would do that? Because we can request additional conditions. I know we can do that. Rachel volunteered that we could do that, and that we could actually talk to these gentlemen about it while we're here, and that she has the authority of the owners to agree to some additional conditions tonight if we were to request them from her as a commission. So Ed, is now the time for me to discuss them? If it's
the will of the commission.
So I can bring things up, we could discuss them.
This would be the time.
Right, okay. Then I would like to discuss 3 things that I have here for us to consider asking them if we're to approve this. I think might be reasonable considerations.
I have one. So, I mean, we have to consider the board. Are you guys okay with us asking?
Well, I want to hear what the considerations are first.
Discuss the considerations, and then we can vote. Do you want to go first?
I'll go. I
have 3.
I just really want to know.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to know about. There's a beautiful oak tree right in front of that entrance of that house. You know which one I'm talking about? Is that beautiful oak tree going to be impacted at some point? It's not going to be impacted at all, right? Okay. That's it. That's all. It's on the swale. I believe it's on the swale. Maybe I couldn't tell.
Okay, what is your questions you want to ask, Commissioner Kennedy?
3 things I would like us to consider. Considering it's a smaller lot, I would like the commission to consider asking them for some additional setbacks to just pull it in a little bit from the neighbors. I have concerns for the neighbors, and I understand the gentleman who bought the house next door to them doesn't have any concerns, but he's not going to live there forever. So my concern is when we talk about density in the village, if we could pull it in a little bit, because when I asked Rachel earlier this evening, she said they're meeting minimum setbacks. So if there was any way to pull in a little bit, I'm not as concerned with the front as I am the side where the building is. It would be the east side that's closer to the adjoining property, and on the back side as well. That would be.
Well, let's take a vote on that. No. Roseanne, can you ask the board on?
Well, do you guys want to have a discussion about that? Anyone have any opinion?
I do. I think that we should leave it alone. I think that we have an architect.
I'm specifically concerned with the east side.
I know. I think that I'm trusting their judgment.
The east side is the gentleman that's
no, he's on the south side.
Okay, and the people from the east side did not speak. I don't believe it. Yeah, I'm okay with setbacks as this.
I think asking them for even more setbacks is crazy.
Okay, well, it's not crazy, Judy. They're meeting minimum
setbacks. If
you may not agree with it, but it's not crazy.
Okay, what's the second one? What's the second request?
Setbacks are the setbacks for everybody else.
We don't need a vote.
Judy, at this point, we're giving someone a variance. We're giving them special consideration.
Okay, what's the second one?
Hold on, I'm responding to Judy because we're still in the discussion phase here. Judy, it's not crazy. And this is the point at which we would request additional things because we're giving them a variance. We're doing something special and nice for them. So this is when we would do our job. I'm just asking if it's, you guys vote against it, move on. But it's not crazy, Judy, and this is our job, just so you're clear on it.
Okay.
The next
That's
one
denied.
Is,
Turn the second one.
Is the height of the building. The height of the building is 16 feet or 14 feet?
16 feet.
16 to the height. It's 16.
The highest point is 16. The bulk of the building, the majority of it is 12 feet.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So
you have a raised section over the living space, basically to give a little bit more breathing room in the major living area, the main living area of the home.
And what is the standard height of a one-story house? I'm also concerned with just trying to make sure this isn't imposing back there in that corner to the neighbors. What's the standard height of a one-story house?
I don't think there is a standard height of a one-story house in South Florida, Commissioner, and that's not meant to be cheeky. It's just
I'm just saying.
Straight up. Again, this is we're proposing.
Is anyone else concerned with the height of the building when you look at it back in that corner?
Not concerned.
Has anyone else considered that what that will be visually?
I don't have a problem with what I've seen.
Because again, okay. Then the third thing, and this is the one actually that I think my most important one for last. When you look at pictures of it, and by the way, whoever designed the building, it's very nice. Yeah, so I like the building. But when I consider, I'm trying to find the picture here. Trying to find the correct picture here. When I look at it, designed. Hold on, it's not looking forward very well. I want to talk about the landscaping as a buffer. Now I know landscaping is a temporary thing. Landscaping, good storm, some landscaping is fine. But again, here's my concern. And I'm talking to the commissioner. So guys, this is my concern. The house to the south, that person bought that house with no house on the lot next to it. They could very well have thought that's an unbuildable lot and nothing will ever be built on that because we don't allow the property behind, which would be on the north side, same thing. The property on the west, same thing. So there are properties here that have, for however long they've owned the property and for as long as the village has been in existence, have faced an empty lot. And now a house is going to go up there and that dramatically impacts them. What I would like us to consider is requesting a significant landscape buffer along the perimeter of the lots, not the front, but specifically the east, the north, and the west, to provide as much of a visual buffer as possible to the neighboring properties, so they can continue to look at green space, which is what that's the view they bought when they bought their properties. To ask them to include in a landscaping plan some significant landscaping buffer there for the sake of the neighbors, not anything to do aesthetically with this property that they designed.
I think that they're going to want to be good neighbors. I think this is their own choice, but I think they'll take care of it. I don't think that we should make any.
You think who will take care of it?
The people.
What people are you talking about?
The people that are building this house.
You think they'll take care of that? What does that mean exactly?
Exactly what their pictures show, that they'll have buffers.
That's my concern. There's not a whole lot of buffer there. There's now, imagine that house, especially on the east side, is up close to that property line as well. And they've been looking out at an empty lot forever.
But you're speaking for, you don't know what those people feelings are. You're speaking general, okay? And I think that if those people looking at this floor plans, if they had their concerns, they would have came forward and talked about it. If they came forward and said they had concerns about it, then I would agree with you. But I think we shouldn't be speaking for other.
I think the idea of giving some landscape buffering in there is something worth considering.
And doesn't P&Z require landscape?
Absolutely not. They do not. There is absolutely zero landscaping requirement in this village, Judy.
Really?
None.
Okay.
I think that they've followed all the rules, and I think we shouldn't impose any more.
Those are my three suggestions. We're considering.
So any other questions? Roseanne, you want to call the roll?
Mayor, just
I'm sorry?
Just put in my final statement for the
Certainly,
record.
Ed. Okay, our attorney will speak first.
Just for the record, please be advised that your decision at the conclusion of this hearing must be based upon competent, substantial evidence related to the village's code of ordinance, not generalized opposition is not fact-based. Competent, substantial evidence is such evidence as will establish a substantial basis of fact from which your findings can be reasonably inferred. It is such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support the conclusion. Competent, substantial evidence includes expert testimony and fact-based comments of neighbors and laypersons. Does not include conjecture, speculation, or generalized statements in support or opposed to the matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dion. Roseanne, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mayor Hoffman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hammerberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes.
Commissioner Samari?
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
5-0. I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Samaria made the motion and it was seconded by Vice Mayor Hammelberg. Good night, everybody. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you all. So,
thank you.
You did a fabulous presentation.
Don't say anything that another commissioner says is crazy, particularly about me. And hold on, and particularly when the next thing out of your mouth is you don't understand something about the village code. Then you go on to ask the board chair.
I don't think it's not a discussion of this matter.
It's not do not say something that says crazy in a live meeting, particularly when you're about to open your mouth and we're just that's our job.
Oh, is that the woman that spoke? Never mind, that's the woman that spoke. She said it would be about the same stuff.
I'm not entirely sure if it was that woman. I took the sheet from the property appraiser and included it in my application. So if you want to use I included it as exhibit A, so you can see that, you know, and
They usually are in the beginning, right?